Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So if you work on or own an online business, you're probably pretty familiar with the KPI behind me, which is DAU, Daily Active Users. It's just a count of customers that interact with your online business on a daily basis. So if you've been following the channel, a lot of what we do is we'll take a basic KPI or metric and add additional information to it. So we added this orange trend line, which is just answering one basic question, which is for this DAU, on average, how many times are they logging in per week? So you can see these customers are logging in or interacting with your online business 3 to 4 times per week, so every other day on a weekly basis. So this is great to have. So now I'm going to show you how to recreate this exact same analysis in MySQL. Okay, so as you can see, we have our customers and their respective login dates. Let me add some columns up here. So we have our customer ID field, we have our login date field. Now the first thing we need to do is anytime you're using trailing or leading data, you have to figure out what the limits of your data are. So in this case, we're going backwards in time, we're looking at trailing data, so we need to figure out how far back in the past can we go. So we're going to figure out what the min login date value is in this table. And because we want the straight min, we can just leave the over clause empty and call this min login date. Just like that. Okay, and the reason why this is important is, let's say we have a login date of September 13th, 2022. That means we can't get a full trailing 7 days of data because the data stops at September 10th, 2022. So let's wrap all of this in a subselect. We can call this just activity because we're logging in. And let's bring the columns up here as well. Okay, now what we're going to do is, for example, with this customer right here with a login date of November 16th, 2022, we want to join back to the same table on the customer ID and bring back not only this date, but the trailing 6 dates or 6 days behind it so that we have a full trailing 7 days of data. So we will just do a left join back to the login table. This is known as a self join. We're going to call this logins, and then we are going to join on customer ID. And then the login date from the second table needs to be less than or equal to our activity login date. And our login date must be greater than date add the login date from our first table. We're adding an interval of -7 days. Okay, so let me explain this really quickly. So for this customer, again, we have them logging in on November 16th, 2022. In the same data, in our self-join, but in the second table, which is this table right here, we want to bring back potentially 7 total records. We want to bring back this login date and then the 6 previous login dates before that. And this logic allows us to do it. it's saying, let's look at the login date from the second table. It has to be less than or equal to this login date, and the login date has to be greater than this date minus 7 days. And that puts a cap on how many total historical records we can bring back, right? So we're bringing back this date here, and then the previous 6 dates before that, if they exist. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is we want to count the number of login dates, or the number of trailing 7-day logins per customer per login date. We'll call this trailing 7-day logins, okay. And then remember, it's an aggregate function, so we need to do a group by. Because these joins are a little tricky conceptually, I'm going to walk through it one more time, which is we are joining a table back to itself in a self join on the customer ID. And then most importantly, what we want to ensure is we're bringing across 7 total records from table 2 to each record in table 1, and it's going to be the login date. So this exact same value, this exact same November 16, 2022, due to this less than or equal to operation here, and then the previous 6 dates prior to that for a total of a trailing 7, but not going further than that because we put this historical cap here. Okay, let's take a look at our data. So now what we should see is each customer, their login date, and the total number of times they've logged in over the last 7 days. It's going to be at a minimum 1 because of this statement right here, where we are bringing across the exact same login date. So it'll be a minimum of 1, a maximum of 7. Okay, great. So here is our data. So for each customer, we have these different login dates and the number of times they've logged in over the trailing 7 days. So the 7 days before it, but also including that same login date, because we don't want to return any values that are 0. We can call all of this A. And now we're going to aggregate our data. So login date, we're going to do a.customer_ID. And if we do a plain old count distinct here, we're just going to get DAU, daily active users. And then all we need to do is just sum this trailing 7-day logins. And while you may think all we need to do is a group by, we actually need to add something in the where clause, and that's to make sure that we have a full trailing 7 days of data behind each record. So we will do where A Okay, great. So what we're saying is we know what the minimum date is in our data set. It's September 10th, 2022. So what we're saying is let's add 7 days to that and make sure that whatever that resulting value is less than or equal to each login date. So what that's going to do is any login date that does not fulfill this logic will get dropped, and they will represent the records that don't have enough trailing data, don't have a full trailing 7 days of data. Okay, we are ready to run this query and move the dataset over to Excel. Okay, here is our data. So we have daily active users, or DAU per day, and then the summation of logins over the last 7 days. Great, let's go to Excel. Alright, here we are. Let's add a new column. Average logins last 7 days, and what we will do is divide these two columns. And let's recreate our analysis. Let's grab the last few months of data. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. Sometimes when you grab all of the historical data, it's too much. Okay. Okay, let's make some cosmetic changes now. I love putting a border on. And then let's change the axis a little bit. Make sure the minimum is 0 so that we reduce visually how much volatility there is. Okay, here we are. So this is pretty cool. We took a standard metric, which is DAU, and made it more interesting so that when a product person looks at this, they know, okay, we have an audience of about 1,200 customers that interact with our online business daily, and they're logging in basically every other day weekly, or 3 to 4 times per week. So this is a great insight, and it doesn't take very much to really level up your game and provide more business insights. So if you like this content, please continue to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, everybody.